Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. Before we dive into this week's episode of Money Never Sleeps, just a quick heads up that the ETH Dublin Hackathon 2023 is just ahead of us in Dublin on May 26th to 28th, 2023 at Dogpatch Labs in Dublin. ETH Dublin is the first Web3 focused hackathon conducted in Ireland, and the idea is to create a space for the community to build and attract talent to the Web3 ecosystem. Check out the details on ethdublin.io. On the show this week, we've got Katerina Carbonell, co-lead of TogetherCrew, one of the 12 founding teams forming the Techstars Web3 Accelerator. Some Web3 communities fall apart under pressure, others come together stronger. TogetherCrew exists to help build and grow communities by ensuring members and stakeholders create together. Katerina's life's work goes broad and deep on how members of teams and communities attract, engage, and retain new contributors, and how people collaborate and co-create within communities, collectively known as network science. With the advent of DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations, in the last few years and the massive opportunity to apply network science to Web3 communities, Katerina joined up with Daniel Ospina and Ashish Gangrade to co-lead TogetherCrew in 2022. In this episode, Katerina and I dig into how her life's work led her to TogetherCrew, what TogetherCrew is doing right now, the longer-term vision for TogetherCrew when virtual organizations become the norm, and the challenges that Katerina expects they'll face on the way there. All right here on Money Never Sleeps. Katerina, how are you today?
Hi, Pete. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Good. Glad to hear it. Listen, thrilled to be an investor in TogetherCrew through Techstars. But before we dig into TogetherCrew, you've got a very unique background and one that has crossed over a number of different paths, but all that seem completely sensible and logical that you've ended up at this point. What I'd love to do is be able to get some of that story out of you today, because I think it's a great story worth telling. So before we get into TogetherCrew, maybe just tell me about what got you excited about Web3 to begin with and Web3 communities in the first place, and how you brought things together with Ashish and with Daniel to launch TogetherCrew.
I was thinking about that. And while thinking about it, I remembered a book that I read, and must have been a preteen, which told a story about another preteen growing up. They moved from primary school to secondary school and how that impacted relationships. And the teacher actually did a social network analysis of the class. And at that time, I didn't know that this was a social network analysis, but it was this exercise to map out relationships. And by doing this exercise, the hero of the story got clarity on her community and the conversation she was part in or not part of. And she made changes based on that. And I forgot about the story. And as you do as a teen, you just kept on living. And I started doing a master thesis in Maastricht, the Netherlands. And I didn't really know what to do. I knew it had to be about information sharing, because that's what we do when we talk with each other. We might not explicitly start a conversation in order to exchange information, but at the end, a lot of conversations are about sharing what is in your mind, what you have read, what you're seeing, or what you want to see, or what you want to read about, or what you want to learn. And this peer student, she passed me this article that used a specific method, which was social network analysis. I was like, this is cool. Nobody else does it. So let's do this. And I really knew nothing about it. I didn't even know what program to use. I was thinking about just using the normal stats program until somebody pointed me out, this is not going to work. You have to change a different program. And that really was the beginning. And I never looked back at looking at the world in a different way. So the main idea of network science, at least for me, is that everything happens between the people. And normally, if you study human beings, so I have a social science background. If you study human beings, you study the being or the team, the community, completely forgetting that there's something happening in between the people. And So that's what I then became fascinated about, is like kind of like why does Pete talk with me, or why not? Like, or how can I get Pete to talk to somebody else? And all these dynamics that happen within a team that I just neglected in all the other social science studies I saw before. And it's all just study the person or study the team, but never study what happens in between the people that influences the team, but also influences the person. So that's why I'm doing the network science. I did a PhD in team dynamics, and along the road, I was really frustrated with academia. I saw hypocrisy in there, in that we were studying human beings, but we were not talking to human beings. So I had enough of that and said, let's do something completely different. Let's move countries and become a freelancer. And then that gave me the freedom to explore. And it also gave me the headspace to really dig more into Web3, because I always heard about it. But as a single parent with 1.5 jobs, having the time to explore other things, it's very limited. And at 10 o'clock in the evening, it's not the right time to really learn something. So when doing the move, I had the chance to do that. And really how TogetherCrew happened is that I saw a link in a community about R and DAO, which was described as a nice group of people who are very friendly, where you can just go and learn about what a DAO is. And I was like, fine, let's begin with that. I know research, I don't know development, so let's begin with that. And in there, I presented myself as a network scientist, and that's how the conversation started. Because somebody saw a problem, or one of my colleagues saw the problem in communities, or how to measure the health of communities, as tools that exist currently are not using the right data points. They're focusing on activity, but not on conversation. And so we just started talking and created a project. And then nearly 1 year later, we're now here with TogetherCrew. We started as a group of strangers that saw the need for communities, and who saw that the tools that community managers and community leaders have are not the right ones in order to measure what is really happening inside the communities.
Okay. Yeah, that's deep. And I totally get that point about when you look at groups, you're either looking at the individual and how they behave within the group, or you're looking at the community, the group overall, and not thinking too much about the interactions. Your time, or since going back to 2015 in Maastricht, right, where you were doing research on adaptive experts and their role in communication networks. Then I think the founder and people analyst at NetNigma was your freelancing activity, right? From 2017 to, earlier this year, people in interaction, team collaboration. You even spent some time at NUIG, National University of Ireland in Galway, which was UCG when I went, and now they've renamed themselves University of Galway. Knowledge workers, organizing projects, attract, develop, and retain, right? All that stuff. Northwestern University, online faculty, doing all these things around learning and organization, engagement, culture, and connectivity, use of social network analysis. All of that feels like such deep, rich research, engagement, teaching, learning that got you to this point. And that it was just, let's slide into this DAO, right?
Yeah. Let's just do this. Let's just jump in the cold water and figure out what DAOs are, and then see what happens. You did a very brilliant summary of everything that I did so far. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. No, I mean, it's like I say, usually on these discussions, Katerina, it's on your LinkedIn profile for the whole world to see. So that whole background makes so much sense. And we could probably get a bit more into that by you kind of telling us what is TogetherCrew, right? And why is it something that the world needs right now?
So on a very explicit, down-to-earth level, TogetherCrew is a community health analytics tool. So we're measuring what is happening inside your communities by looking at the frequency and quality of conversation. At a higher level, TogetherCrew is the way to build sustainable communities. We're measuring different things. We're measuring the structure of the community. Let's say communities that are set up like social clubs, like they have a different structure than communities that are centered around a product, and that is okay. But you need to know the structure in order to know if your community is able to do the goal that you want to do. So that's one thing that we're doing. And the other thing that we're doing is that we're going into the heads of people. So we're measuring, do they actually feel connected to the community? Because like Web3 is about ownership. So then if you are specifically a Web3 community, then do your community members feel that they actually own the community? Or are you calling it a community, but it's actually just an audience, which is kind of like you just put a label on it that is currently hyped, and therefore you know that if you call it a community, people will see it more positively than it actually is. But you can call it a community, but if you're not treating it like it is a community, it will show in the structure. So it would show in the metrics, and it will also show in how members feel about your community. So at a higher level, that's what we're doing, kind of we're showing you what is happening inside of it.
And what are the actionable steps that a community manager can take based upon the information and analytics that TogetherCrew are providing?
So for example, we're measuring decentralization. In Web3 blockchain, people know what it is, but they're often thinking about the technology. If you apply the same concepts to communities, so to human beings, what we're measuring is who is influential in your community. And then I have to bring in another concept, which is kind of Web3. It is permissionless and everybody can do everything and everything's open. While this might be true on the screen, if in a Discord you have, let's say, 1,000 messages a day, I don't know who has the time to read them all. And this goes back to like the sciences. If you need to be in conversation in order to influence people and be influenced by them. So if you know the structure, you know how decentralized the community is. Therefore, you know who's in reality calling the shots. Like you can call yourself a decentralized community. You can be permissionless. You can allow everybody inside your community. But if it's only 3 people who are kind of influential in it by being central players, you are not decentralized, no matter how much you're calling it. And that's one thing we're measuring. So we can give you the names of the people who are guiding all the conversations. And then you can take actions on that. And certain communities need to be more centralized. Other communities don't. But you need to know what you want and you need to know where you are right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's critically important, right? In that, for the unchristened in Web3, just so everyone knows, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. And we have a thesis around virtual organizations and about how critical they will become. There is a long path for us to all travel on where virtual societies are going to become the norm on this planet. But before we get to virtual societies, we need to get to virtual organizations. And that the DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization, if you take that experiment really that's been operating for the last number of years and you hold that up to what is a virtual organization, I'm not defining that. I don't think we can. It's just that, is it a current day formation of a company? Is it a community? It is a club? Is it, a combination of those 3 things? And the current DAO framework right now, is that going to play out? Is that going to be what will embody virtual organizations in 5, 10, 15 years' time? Don't know. Perhaps it will, perhaps it will not. But I think the big question is around those first 2 words of the phrase, is decentralized. Is it decentralized? And is it autonomous? And that when you're managing a community that is a DAO, those are the types of things that you're concerned about, right? Do we have a sufficient degree of decentralization here? Because there are some impacts if you're not, especially if you're an investment DAO. And then autonomous, right? Can you demonstrate that this community just operates, autonomously? and that you have no single group within the community that is calling all the shots, right? Then it isn't truly autonomous and it isn't truly decentralized. So these are all things that as virtual organizations and the path to virtual organizations unfold, where you don't need to have this big, and this is a word that only entered into my lexicon, Katerina, when I left the corporate world, but the word of corporatism, right? And all of the complications that brings to how communities behave. There is a big, grander vision here in terms of how organizations will live in the virtual world. And that's why we're part of this journey with you. In a long roundabout way, what does the world look like when TogetherCrew is an absolute necessity? What is your vision for how the world's going to unfold with this?
So it is a world where co-creation is essential to everything. And to your point before, co-creation already happens within traditional organizations, but it is not valued as that. There is still a lot of, let's call it red tape around it,
and politics.
Oh yeah, I'm not talking about politics today. I had enough of that the last time. Well, so the difficult thing about co-creation is that it's hard to say, when does my work end and your work start? So that egos come into play. And we need to be okay with saying, this is our work, or also be okay to say, you know what, like this sentence, I really, really feel this sentence belongs to me and I want to get credit for that sentence. So I'll take an example from academia. Like science started with a lot of individual work, like people were exploring alone. And then over time, we had more and more knowledge. So people started working together. And then what we now have is that for certain papers, it's clearly marked who did what part. For example, Katerina did the methods and Pete wrote the introduction. And, Daniel, one of my co-founders, did the conclusion, and Ashish checked the theory and stuff like that in order to give credit. So everybody wanted to be credited for their work that they do it. And that gives you an author list, which is huge, which then impacts your promotion, because promotion is based on articles, but then also in what position of the author list your name is. And it's just a messy way of working together and making sure that people get credited for the work that they did. And people agree that, well, this is everybody's work, so let's just give credit to the whole team. So there's a balance between saying this is my work and this is our work. And in the future, I hope this will be more comfortable with the balance. I think there's a lot to learn on how to interact with people and how that maybe the interaction will never be efficient and optimized and kind of the best ever. And that is also okay. So there's a science of community building and there's a science of conversation that isn't yet fully clear. We're trying to bring this in with TogetherCrew. And potentially the answer is that there are several answers, and that's also okay. So it's not black and white.
Okay. I'm with you. So let me see if I can piece together an example, right? So you gave a great example there from an academic perspective in that, with me and you and Ashish and Daniel all contributing to a work, a paper, a thesis, a development, a code base, whatever. And that you can properly say, well, Katerina was responsible for this, Ashish was responsible for that, Daniel was responsible for the other thing, and Pete did that. When you bring that into a commercial enterprise where you've got people developing tons of work, analysis, the heavy duty coding alongside the software engineering to figure out even what problem to solve, the business analysis to how are we going to turn that into something that our product management team can work with, and the product management team turning that into how is it something we can sell, the marketing folks getting involved in all that. So that would be a very corporate example. Right now on the DAO front, we have things popping up that are, Do you want to go down the route of Links DAO, which is a golf DAO, and buying golf courses?
Yes, you can
Do you
go.
maybe want to give an example of an existing DAO that you'd say, listen, we've looked at with either naming it or without naming it, was saying, listen, let's look at some of the interactions here and how people are contributing. We have investment DAOs, we have community DAOs, we have cultural DAOs. Is there one that you can point to kind of give a descriptive to say how this can all work?
Maybe I'll give it a try. We looked at one DAO. It was a larger one. And what we saw was that the community really relied on 3 people answering all the questions, because most people joined the community, had a question, and then left. So there was a lot of churn, which potentially for that case was okay. Based on what we saw there was no co-creation. If there would have been co-creation in this community, somebody else would have taken the opportunity to say, okay, I see the same questions answered, or more or less the same question answered every day. Tagging the person who answers the question, telling them, I'm going to collect your answers. You'll find them here in a Notion or whatever in a document. This document then is the result of a co-creation process. Somebody had the knowledge and answered questions, but never had the time to actually collect those answers and put them in one document. And then another person saw this problem, took the initiative to create a document that mainly contains the answers from the first person. So you could assume in a traditional way, in a traditional organization, you could say, well, this is not co-creation because it's just the answers from person number 1, the person who is in the community answering all the questions. But we would be saying, no, it is co-creation because you actually have 2 people involved in this process. And that could be reflected in the, giving credits to where credits.
I'm with you. And you can incentivize people to create value together. You can incentivize people to contribute on their own, but at least you've got that proper attribution between community members on who's doing what.
Yeah, going back to picking on your point on incentivizing. If somebody then would see that the person who just collected the answers does get credit for that acts as an incentive for other people. Because let's be frank, collecting answers and putting them in a document, it's not just copy pasting. There's a lot of editing and summarizing going on. So there is a lot of work. It takes work, and there should be a reward for that. And if other people see that hard work gets rewarded in that community, they're more willing to also do hard work that is not required or is not asked by those people who have started the community.
Yep. I mean, you can take an investment DAO example and say that an investment DAO that is, say, investing in startups and investing in Web3 startups that says, all right, well, we've got 20 people who have made investments in startups before are part of the DAO. You've got probably 40 people who might not have made an investment before, but are, say, mentors. And then you've got another 40 people that might have made some investments, but just do so on a kind of ad hoc basis as an angel. And so you've got 100 people as part of this DAO. And that when a new investment opportunity gets proposed, you throw that opportunity into the middle of the ring on Discord, more or less, and people will have a look at the deal, usually through a deck of slides or perhaps a video of the founder giving a pitch, or perhaps just with some sharing of notes, and say, all right, well, let's start gathering some insights. Some people out of those 100 may start asking questions. Some may make some statements based upon what they're seeing on a website, what they're seeing on their Twitter following, what they're seeing on anything on, perhaps on that individual Web3 project's Discord, and making all of these, assumptions, making statements, asking more questions. Someone perhaps is collecting all that, maybe collating all of that, perhaps then engaging with the founder of the Web3 project, the founder of that startup, to say, all right, let's gather some more questions here. Let's then bring it back to this governing council to say, do we have any last call here, questions in terms of what people want to know before we say, yes, we will invest 100K USDC into this project, right? And that's a ton of detail that is flying around Discord say even they're using a tool like Discourse to manage proposals, that there's a lot of detail in there, and that out of those 100 people that are part of that DAO, maybe some have contributed a question here, a question there. Others have done some deep analysis and provided a lot of examples on, and perhaps, hey, what's this, what's a longer term vision for this project? How are things all going to play out? And maybe someone's written a few pages on that, and you could pull that all together on a Notion, absolutely, and do proper attribution of who's doing what. And that when, that then decides perhaps the share of the upside, who's done the most work when it comes to investing in that, right? So I'm thinking of a capitalist commercial opportunity here for an investment DAO, where tons and most of the DAO activity out there so far has been very community-based and trying, get those communities built in a virtual setting. But I'm expecting that TogetherCrew could likely do some piecing apart of all of the communication and information flow that takes place within, yes, even an investment DAO, to be able to provide the insight into who's doing what. Now, that becomes particularly important when you get into the regulatory framework, where you need to prove that this is truly decentralized and there's no one single group or single individual that's making all the decisions, and that you need to show that it is truly a community-led decision here, right? So am I kind of going down the right path here?
Yes, you're going down the right path. It is where we want to be heading. That you can see the impact one person had on the community, or potentially even see the impact you have or a person has across different communities. See the knowledge that they're carrying from one community or one DAO to another community and another DAO. Kind of like, we know talking about community members in a positive light, but there are also people who join a DAO or join a community and completely just destroy it, or, toxic people. So you can follow them and kind of see all the bodies around, and that could be an impact score that they're having, that so that you don't have to accept them, or you can, as a community leader, you can quickly decide that this person we should actually kick out, which goes against being permissionless, but that's a different topic.
The other thought that I had was that, in that example I gave, yes, you can find the toxic people. Yes, you can find individual contributors, but you can also perhaps identify 2 or 3 people that really just vibe off each other, right? That where you're looking at the communication between those that are part of the community. And wow, yeah. I just thought about something. The word communication and the word community have the same root.
Yes.
Latin 101 here on Money Never Sleeps.
Picking up on the point that you like finding 2 people who vibe with each other. We can do that in a month.
Yeah.
You can clearly see who are the people. Going back to your example about crediting and who's doing what work, what you can also do is finding new leaders within your community. Like some people who have shown that they can take action and help your community grow, and that they're there for the community. The final thing that I think would be helpful for DAOs and communities is like bottom-up generated expertise. You mentioned the questions people ask and the kind of the type of work that somebody can contribute to an investment DAO before they're doing the investment. I think that we each have our own expertise that all leads us to ask specific questions, or leads us, for example, more to be the person who summarizes conversation, or the person who goes into checks in detail somebody's document to kind of pinpoint all the weaknesses in it. And these, what I would call bottom-up generated expertise labels, can be derived from the structure of your community. So we have a background, we have a degree at universities, or you might not have, doesn't matter. But that's just one way of becoming known as the expert in an area. The other way to become known as an expert is through the conversations you're having. And I'm not going to summarize my PhD right now.
No. Okay, we can link that. We can all go read it, right? Can we read your thesis?
Of course, it's open, but yes, you can. It's open.
Okay, thank you. You will have some challenges that get thrown in front of you, Katerina, and that TogetherCrew overall are going to have some challenges thrown at them. Reaching the right communities that need TogetherCrew the most, explaining TogetherCrew to investors, creating value for investors, right? All of that. How could the way that you face these challenges perhaps change your path? I know I'm asking you to look a little bit into a crystal ball here, but what do you think are going to be some of the biggest hurdles that TogetherCrew will need to surpass?
I think the biggest hurdle is around data ownership, and it links to identities of people, because it's the community members who are generating the data. But the way the tool is currently set up, it is for community managers and community leaders. So there is this conflict there that one person provides the data and another person uses it. So going back to the conversation on incentives, the question that we need to tackle once is how to reward people for giving the data. I think that's one question, which might be the easiest one to answer. The other question is how to make community managers and leaders comfortable with sharing their community health dashboard with the whole community or even beyond, which in a way, Web3 might be ideally placed to do this. Web3, blockchain, everything is visible to everybody. Why should your community health score not be visible to everybody? Even if it's bad. It's no problem going online or on Twitter and saying, oh, TogetherCrew did a community health check with TogetherCrew and we are awesome. Everybody does that. But would you also go online and say, oh, we're actually pretty bad right now and we have lots of work ahead? And I think that's something that should be happening because it's part of being in Web3. Like our community health score should actually be, let's say, we should store it using our web so that it's there all the time. People can go back and check your community health score in February was bad and in March it was average. Oh, you did a lot. You actually invested in your members and that should be visible to everybody.
Yeah, an open, transparent scoreboard for community health in Web3.
Yes.
Right. And that, you're at the top of the table. Are you incentivized? Or not even incentivized, but it's just, hey, this is transparent. We do want to do better. We do want to keep the community members engaging with each other and find better and new ways for them to do just that. And for those communities that are lagging, that, hey, do we need to flush this out? Do we need to get rid of the toxic people? Do we need to find a better way to incentivize contributions here and engagement? When non-crypto natives, when non-Web3 natives look at this, it's hard for them to draw the inferences to say this is how it's going to work when in the real world. But I can totally see the value of this when you take people out of that corporate setting of creating value for a corporate group, right? And yes, that corporate group has shareholders, but that shareholder concentration is always looked at in a different light. But when you have a truly community creation, a co-creation, this contribution that takes place where you can share value across all the community members, you need a way to properly handle all this. And that's what I'm hearing you talk about. What is something that you know to be true that others believe to be false? This is a question I like to ask about your earned secret. Do you have an earned secret from your time walking through and living in this space for as long as you have?
I do have one, and it came with a high price. So there's a lot of stuff that happens around the people that you don't know when they join a community. What you only see is the conversations that they're having. But having and still dealing with the consequences of losing a loved one made me realize that something like grief never leaves you and that you never know when it hits you. And I think when you're part of a community, if somebody is suddenly not there anymore, or if it's not, or it's being less responsive to, in a way, know that something happened outside of the community that you have no control over, the person might not like the community anymore and just decided to disengage, or something else happened. So check in with people. That's the main thing. Give them space, check in. So find out what the right balance is.
Yeah. No, that's a courageous thing to share, Katerina. So thank you. I can definitely understand how you can point to that and say, all right, how are we going to keep people together, right? Communication is the absolute necessity. What I find myself is that if every once in a while, even I am a person of few words, and when I start getting into that shell, that's where you can become aloofly toxic, if that even makes sense. You know, that aloofness can be a detriment to a community. And that's something that I look out for in myself. But understanding the depths of loss and grief absolutely are a huge component of that. So thank you for sharing that. If you can round out this conversation with me, Katerina, we're at the point of the discussion where I do like to ask the final last question that we ask everybody, which is, what is one thing that people would not expect to know about you?
So this might sound strange, but I'm able to get angry. So if you're part of a community I'm part of, and I start swearing, we are in deep shit. Let's put it in.
You said shit.
When I say whatever comes into my mind. So I censor myself a bit, but especially, like I know that I can stay calm for a long time when things happened. But if you see me that I'm not calm anymore, that I start swearing in the community, we need to really, really, really look what is the cause of it, and we need to solve it right now. Like, people have gone too far. Let's say everything is falling apart.
I got you. So we're going to look out for Katerina cussing and see if that is a health score itself. That's probably it. I tend to try to, before the word comes out of my mouth, at least if I'm speaking publicly or at least in a big group of people, I do try to change it to brother trucker and fustercluck. But no, you note for the future that when I am swearing, generally, then I am quite passionate about something and or angry. So you got to let these emotions out. I can get a sense for that passion that's there. So thank you, Katerina, for sharing that. Listen, it's been wonderful having you on the show. This has been a deep conversation that I kind of did expect we were going to have, but I didn't know which way it was going to go. So thank you for opening up yourself to having this kind of chat with me. And I'm looking forward to seeing great things from TogetherCrew. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Twitter. Don't write me emails, please don't. But I'm Katerina Bohle on Twitter, and you can DM me there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Katerina.
Thank you.
That does it for this week, folks. Thanks to Katerina for opening up her mind to help us figure out why she does what she does. And you can learn more about Katerina and TogetherCrew in the show notes on our website, moneyneversleeps.ie. If you like what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as it helps others to find the show. Thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early stage startup investor focused on where fintech meets crypto and crypto meets Web3, and I run the Techstars Web3 Accelerator. There are plenty of links in the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie and how to get in touch, so don't hesitate to reach out. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.